like moving off onto the next story, because that sort of like ties in with that, where there are other aspects to this which might sort of pull you over to the other side as well, which is the PlayStation camp. Like you're talking about Starfield being the thing that might pull you over to the Xbox One, but this might bring you back over to the PlayStation side. So in our second story, according to Hermen Hulst, a Guerrilla co-founder whom Jim Ryan tapped to lead the PlayStation studios in 2019, the group has more than 25 titles in development, quote, for the PlayStation 5, nearly half of which are entirely new IP. This is via the Wired.com article, which was done with, I think it was done with Hermen Hulst and Jim Ryan. So it was a few different people were quoted in the article, but this was sort of the big takeaway. A lot of people were talking about this to say that, oh my God, like there's 25 titles in development and half of them are new IP. Like this is big news. So yeah, kind of a big thing to pull you back over to the PlayStation side. What do you think about this?
That is a tasty statistic. That is a big number.
That is something to chew on.
Yeah. And if we just break that down over like me being me, I need to break that down. I'm like, so it's 25 titles and we're talking like a console cycle is 7 years. Half of those is new IPs. So we're looking at so like 2-ish new IPs every year. That, but we don't know of that. How many are going to be indie games? Are going to be smaller ones? How many of them are going to be big, massive, big budget AAAs? We don't know. But yeah, if you think about like 2 massive IPs every year, that's quite good.
Yeah.
But PlayStation have got some awesome IPs as it is.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about the awesome IPs that they've got, so they've got God of War, Ragnarok, they've got, Horizon Forbidden West, they've got Uncharted, which who knows what's going to be happening with that. And they could just be taken over in terms of the games that people want to play. Yeah. So the games that most people want to play are on PlayStation. That could easily be what defines this generation, and that's that of the 25 titles in development.
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth on this quite a little bit, because like while I like get the headline and everyone's excited about this and like, oh my God, 25 titles, that's amazing, that's a lot of games. But really, it's kind of like par for the course, a lot of this as well, because like while it's exciting that I guess like half of 25, which by the way, Sony, half of 25, you can't half it unless you've got you got half a game somewhere, which is like kind of new but not, but like looking at last gen games, if we're talking 13 games, like giving them like if we're rounding up, so 13 new IP over a sort of 6-7 year period. If you look at like what they did on the PlayStation 4, they had Bloodborne, Drive Club, Knack, Order 1886, Until Dawn, Last Guardian, Horizon Zero Dawn, a load of other small stuff like Matterfall and Bound, Detroit Become Human. There's Ghost of Tsushima, Days Gone, Concrete Genie, Dreams, Death Stranding. So there's already 15 there that I've just listed, and that was from last gen. So 15 to 13, it's actually kind of part of the course. It's just less. Right, it's actually less, but there will be more, obviously, in the pipe, like a couple of years.
But right now, yeah, and that list, that's a great list.
Isn't it?
Yeah, there's only a few that's not really on my radar, just the smaller ones.
Yeah.
I mean, Knack, that wasn't very well received, was it?
No, it was a launch title anyway. So.
It was a launch title, and it was just a demo in the amount of polygons they could fit on the screen,
basically.
Basically.
Yeah.
But they listened to that, and this generation, their launch stuff is just great, like the Astro's Playroom. It's just knocked out the park. Mm-hmm. And, the Ratchet and Clank thing, it's looking amazing before it's even come out. So that's interesting that those actual maths. Yeah, my maths, I was like, that's quite good.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. Like a lot of people, a lot of people like sort of reacted to it in the obvious way. Like, of course, like why wouldn't this be good news? Like, of course, like oh my God, 25 games and half of them are new IP. That's incredible news. But it's actually kind of part of the course. Like everyone, like this happens every single gen, but we haven't really, like no one's really stepped back and thought about that. But
what Xbox needs to do now is come out and go, we've got 26 titles in development.
and this is the thing. They've got, like, Xbox they've just acquired, like, over the past few years, they've now got 26 studios, I think. 26.
Right.
And of them 26, I think there's like 5 of them which have multiple teams on them as well. So there's a couple of teams that have got like 3+ projects in the works as well.
Yeah.
So Xbox just like need to. I don't think Xbox are ahead, like, by any means. Like, I still think they're behind because they've got a lot to prove. And like you said before with PlayStation, they've got a lot of awesome IP already that they can just expand on, and it's only going to get better. Like, a Ghost of Tsushima 2 is just going to be amazing. Like, right. It brings me butterflies just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like, I will marry that game.
Can you imagine that, but a bit better? No, I can't imagine that a bit better. Like, it's almost perfect game.
On a new console as well.
On a new console. Oh, gosh.
So there's a lot to be excited about, but...
Over the next... But that's going to be, like, a long way away. It's going to be
this is the thing I did want to mention. When it comes to a new IP, when you're talking about development time, it normally takes about 5-6 years on average to finish a game from start to finish if it's a new IP. Because there's a lot of new systems and things that you need to develop out. Sometimes it can be a bit shorter, especially if you're reusing technology from another IP. Like with Uncharted, I'm guessing like a lot of that tech that was used in The Last of Us Part 1 was probably taken from Uncharted. Like they probably used the same engine. They probably used a lot of like animation systems that they had and stuff like that. So I can imagine that transferred off quite well, even though it's a new IP. But there's like, even then, it's probably still took them a good 4 or 5 years to finish that project. So there's going to be this stuff spread out over a whole generation. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's good news. But it is part of the course. It's
if you're looking at when games get released and the console generation, like mid to late generation is when, in my opinion, mid to late generation is when the better stuff comes out.
I agree.
Really. So it might be a bit thin on the ground this first generation, this early on in the generation, but Returnal was really well received. So they're off to a good start, and Xbox have yet to compete with that. I think at this stage,
Xbox have sort of shown their hand a bit too early. I think like they've announced a ton of stuff, like an absolute ton of stuff. They just need to start delivering now and showing like, we've shown you the goods and we've got the goods, like, here they are, sort of thing. So I hope that they sort of follow through and they don't just like follow this sort of Game Pass subscription service too much to the point that they forget about like the reason why people are opting into the service, which is the games.
To buy games. So, yeah. And I think before the last generation, it was very much, I'll buy this and I'll play these games, and I'll buy this and I'll play these games. That is not what people think about anymore, because Game Pass is in there. Frame rate is a factor now, because before they were very much similar. I would say last generation, there's not much between them in terms of performance. No. And now there's all these other factors that you've got to think about, and games is just one tiny part of that. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, when all's said and done, because like you said, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 were quite close, but they still had their differences. Like the Xbox One was still like underpowered compared to the PS4, I guess, but it wasn't so much that it completely like you had to split the games up almost. Like they could still release on both systems, like the third-party publisher, so it wasn't too bad. But this generation, they're even closer. Like they're super close. Like the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, are, like the differences between that power output is just, it's really minimal. It's like it's not even worth mentioning if there is a difference. Like we're talking about teraflops, which doesn't really matter when it comes to like computation in certain scenarios. Like it's just, they're very, very similar. They're very, very close. The thing that's making the difference this time though is the external services like Game Pass, and like what is going to happen with PlayStation now, how are PlayStation going to react to this sort of stuff. So all of this stuff is going to be influenced in some weird way, which we're not quite used to yet.
Like 70 quid a game as well. That's a factor. I mean, every generation, every new console generation, they increase the price. But in this day and age, £70 or $70, that's a lot for
a lot of money.
People, especially, post-COVID and stuff, people that were affected badly. There are some people that got lots of savings. That's great. But there are a lot of people that, don't, and they can't.
Yeah, I mean, the value between Xbox and PlayStation right now is just, it's night and day. Like I know PlayStation is very much outpacing Xbox in terms of hardware. Like, absolutely, that goes without saying. But there are sort of interesting cracks within that itself, because like it's really hard to get hold of a PlayStation 5 right now.
Yeah.
And because of that, the reason that's like a big deal is because just this past month, the Xbox Series X outsold the PlayStation 5 in the UK. Which is very interesting. And it's not that Xbox are getting more and more popular, which I'm sure they are in their own right as well. But I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that people just cannot get hold of a PlayStation 5, and now they're bleeding customers to the other side. So it's sort of like this weird dynamic
especially people that want both eventually. Like, or it could well be that if an Xbox is available and there's something that I really want to play on Xbox and PlayStation isn't available, I'll buy Xbox and then I'll buy a PlayStation 5 towards the end of the console cycle. It's probably not what they want to hear. And I'll just do my backlog of PlayStation 5. I could see that happening.
I mean, we mentioned, like we spoke about this earlier, but like the whole crowd of people that just play one sort of type of game, and they just like they buy one console and then they buy the same game over and over again, like every year, like something like FIFA or Call of Duty, and that's all they play. Like, or they'll just buy Grand Theft Auto 5 and that's it.
Or Forza or F1 games.
Yeah, right. And these are hugely popular games that we don't really talk about that much, like in terms of like when games media are covering E3 and things like this, but they're huge, massive games that like sell gangbusters. But they're the people that are picking up Xbox Series X's right now, because they're just like, why? I can't get hold of a PlayStation 5, but FIFA is on the Series X, so I'll just grab that. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like, it's just a different controller. Like, I'll get used to it. Yeah. So it's this weird sort of dynamic that we're going through right now. So
it'd be interesting to see how far that goes. Coming back to your question though, I'll ask you this: which studio would you like to see a new IP from with PlayStation, and what sort of game do you want?
That is a good question.
You wrote it, Vin. Come on.
I know I did. I totally forgot about it. Like, I was going to ask you it, so like you sort of turned it around.
I'd have been stumped, though. I'd have been stumped.
I am stumped.
I can't think of any game in my brain that's not being serviced. Like, every itch of game is I've heard about something that's like fulfilling that. There's nothing that I'm left wanting for, apart from maybe like what was promised for Cyberpunk.
Yeah, maybe we'll get that game one day. I'm sure like when Cyberpunk gets its next gen version at some point or another, probably next year at some point, I'm sure. When that comes around, I'm sure that game will be fine. Will it be incredible like people are expecting? No, probably not. But we'll get some version of that game eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah. But what about you? Is there anything? There's no big voids. That's the thing about the games industry. There's like
everything's getting filled right now.
They're covering the bases all the time, because if there's a niche stuff, it'll be filled.
I guess like the only thing that I want more of is I like action adventure games. Like they're my jam. Like, I hope that we don't like move away too far from them, and we keep getting them sort of games. Like, there's one of my favorite companies is a company called Gen Design, which are the people that make The Last Guardian, and they split off from Sony a few years ago, and they've got their own independent studio now. So I'm really excited to see what they're working on next. But that's very much part of the course. So I'm not sure like studios that are working on stuff. I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see like something like Naughty Dog go back to something a bit more cartoony, and and work on like a new Jack and Daxter or something like that. That'd be interesting. Like, just so they have a palate cleanser or something, so they're not working on all this really depressing stuff.
They need one. Gosh.
Yeah.
They need that. I mean, I guess I haven't played a cowboy game since Red Dead Redemption 2. There's and I guess now there's wizardy stuff, because there's wizards, cowboys, Vikings, aliens, monsters. And that's all there is, isn't there? And everything's being filled except cowboys hasn't been filled for a while. Maybe gangsters, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So something cowboyish.
Yeah, cowboyish. Yeah, I mean, I'm always like a big fan of like stuff that's set in Japan, I guess. Like that, I think that's a given. Like, considering my history and stuff.
Considering you invented Assassin's Creed Japan, yeah.
Right, and yeah, probably had some part to play somewhere in a very small piece, like to do with Ghost of Tsushima because of that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I haven't really got anything. Like, I obviously still love to see like an Assassin's Creed set in Japan, but we've got Ghost of Tsushima 2 on the way, I'm sure. So like, I am all set. Like, I'm happy. Like, that's the only game that I really want, I guess. Like,
that reminds me, actually. Yeah, there's that game that's coming out on PlayStation that's like a little indie game that I wrote down for prep for next week's talk. Kenya Bridge of Spirits.
Oh yeah, Kena. This does look like an amazing game. It's a bit. I think it's Kena.
Yeah, it's Kena. I just said Kenya for some reason.
Kenya, right? It's the closest word to Kena, I guess. But yeah, that game looks absolutely phenomenal. That's another one. It looks like a Pixar movie, pretty much. Like it's kind of astounding. I actually think like some of the writers and directors, I guess, like the actual animators, like the people that created the game, I think they're ex Disney workers or something. I think, like, I'm pretty sure they worked in the animation industry before they switched over to games.
Okay,
but yeah, I'm really curious to see how that game comes out, actually, because it does look really good. But I know it's a bit cheaper of a price as well, so it might be a bit short. I'm not sure.